This is what we've got here, right? Here's some of the facts, okay, right, of what um, shows me that there must be something going on here. So, when it comes to evidence, right, you have to understand that evidence is like the breadcrumbs. It's like, for example, if someone takes a loaf of bread uh, and they walk away with it. If you want to know who took the bread, you just follow the breadcrumbs in a sense, right? If there's no bread, there's no breadcrumbs. Well, it's like that with the Satanism thing, right? Is that we've got so many breadcrumbs of them. You know, we've got so much evidence to support that there's a very, very, very high chance that they probably do exist. Now, one of the things, right, that certain psychiatrists try to make out is that they try to make out things like that what might have caused it would be things like what would make people think that they were in a cult, right, is because of horror movies, okay? But there's actually a problem with this theory, right? So we're gonna be we're not I'm not gonna be biased about this, right? I'm not gonna try and make it look like something. I'm just gonna show you where the evidence keeps leading us to. In so many horror films, like The Exorcist, for example, like take the Exorcist for as a good example, right? That whole film has nothing to do with an exorcism. I mean, it has nothing to do with a satanic ceremony. It has the context of that whole movie. You don't see people standing in a circle with robes, holding knives and a pentagram on the ground and sacrificing a human being. You don't see that in the movie The Exorcist, okay? In fact, if you think about all the other horror movies like Friday the 13th, Michael Myers, there's nothing to do with ceremonies there. It's like maybe some killer going around killing people at random. Nothing to do with satanic religion, okay? I mean, there's so many horror films out there, right, that have got nothing to do with people doing satanic ceremonies, okay? And that's just one of the facts of the. I mean, if there is any, I haven't seen any horror movies that have anything like that in them. Maybe the latest ones like Eyes Wide Shut. I think that's probably one of a very rare movies that would have a ceremony scene in it. So that idea doesn't really actually hold any water, right? I mean, it's like, for example, you know yourself, right? I mean, you can watch a movie about dragons, right? But it doesn't mean that when you walk down the street after watching the movie that you're gonna believe that you're being attacked by dragons, you know? Also, the knowledge of things like that, of like rituals and things like that, it's very hard to actually get a hold of that information. It's like, for example, if you look at certain movies like Lord of the Rings and that, or anything to do with like witches and that, or another movie would be like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, or that woman, the witch woman saying "mirror, mirror on the wall" and things like that, right? You'll notice that you don't really find them sacrificing a human being in those kind of cartoons. Maybe the witch has a wand and then they say some magic words, okay? But you don't actually see them doing a ceremony with robes and chanting Satan. You don't actually see witches in films or cartoons of them speaking to Satan. Another factor, right, is that you got satanic ceremonies are actually a fact. You actually have Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, for example, and you can see that they are doing rituals in the name of Satan. Now, of course, they have like their own name of what they believe Satan to represent, like the rebel and things like that. They'll have their own like interpretations and that, right? But how do we know that there isn't people out there that do ceremonies like them, but Also, the idea of false memories, right, is that they usually think that maybe these therapists are maybe using suggestion. The problem with that is that usually therapists are trained not to put words in or ideas in the people's heads. Usually they're trained not to do that. And also, it doesn't make sense for therapists to want people to say things that are to do with rituals. Because the thing about therapists, right, is that they go through a school that's non-religious, okay? The education system does not promote anything to do with religion, it promotes atheism. So for therapists to make up something about some kind of satanic cult and risk ruining their own reputations and careers, I don't think that they're going to be wanting to do that, like ruin their own careers by making something up that's going to be extremely bizarre. Problem with the idea that it's make-believe, right, is that these therapists themselves were getting death threats. They were getting phone calls and death threats telling them to leave the situation alone.
I believe we need to believe them. They sound bizarre. They sound beyond the capacity of human beings. But the stories we receive are tremendously consistent.
Is this an epidemic?
I believe involvement in Satanism is increasing. I believe it is present in many communities around our country, and I believe it demands our attention.
But somebody is apparently trying to discourage scrutiny. We've talked to therapists who treat ritual abuse victims, and they tell us of the threats they've received.
I have direct knowledge of both death threats on a therapist and an attempt to end that therapist's life, which was unsuccessful.
Here in Chicago, a group of well-known therapists from all over the country had the courage to share horror stories of threats and intimidation.
Therapists have been directly threatened in ways that are quite alarming to them. The patient indicated to me that she wished to sacrifice the child with which she was pregnant. Naturally, I wasn't too enthusiastic about this. Shortly after this occurred, I started to get telephone death threats.
One of the things that I would add is that we are now hearing these reports from literally hundreds of therapists in every part of the United States.
Someone out there is telling us to back off.
And things like that. Do you honestly think that a bunch of professional therapists are going to want to lie about something that they can't prove of people wanting to try and kill them? Does that make sense to anybody? Now let's look at the whole thing to do with vampires and werewolves, okay? So we've got Bill Schnoblin and we've got Elaine, two members of the Brotherhood, okay? Bill became a vampire eventually, and Elaine, she just stayed as just a normal witch, she did. Right, so this is from Bill Schnoblin's book called Lucifer Dethroned, and Elaine's book called He Came to Set the Captives Free. I mean, I remember that book. It's quite an old book, that one is. It goes way back to the 80s, I think. Now, just so you understand, the Brotherhood is not easily located like the Freemasons are. At least with the Freemasons, you can see their lodge. You know they've got the square and the compass. You know who walks in and out of there, and and people can even say that they're a Freemason, openly, even though they're a secret society, right? People can know who's part of it, Now, when it comes to Brotherhood, that's something completely different. Basically, they can be almost any normal kind of a person. They could be a school teacher. They could be any kind of a person. They don't actually have it appears that they don't have a building or a particular website. If there is a website it's called the Brotherhood, it probably won't be them. I doubt it. Because this Brotherhood, they don't actually work like that. They work extremely secretively. Nobody's. The only way that you would know who's in the Brotherhood is that you would actually have to be a member yourself. That's how secretive they are, you know, and they're not allowed to talk about it to anybody, and that's how they keep themselves, you know, out of the public eye, basically. The kind of places that they usually go to, according to her book, Elaine's book, is that they usually go into barns, mansion. There's a mansion house, like a power structure, or the woods, or maybe in certain houses, from what I've analyzed here. So people are not going to really like be able to pinpoint where they actually are or what they're even doing, you know. So basically, doctors and teachers, they can be part of the Brotherhood secretly, and you would never know about it, you know. I mean, you'd probably have to put them on a lie detector test, you know, to find out if they're actually part of it, you know. According to Elaine, she says that the Brotherhood centers are in Los Angeles and San Francisco area. And Bill, he was told by a Brotherhood member that there is a secret satanic power near Los Angeles. So just outside of Los Angeles, there's some kind of a power structure of the Brotherhood, right? Now, Orion, he might be talking about the same place that Elaine was talking about. She claimed that when she was like involved with high power magic competitions, she was in the hills of California, and she says that it was just outside of Los Angeles. So they could actually be talking about the same place, you know. Also, another interesting thing that Bill talked about was that he says that in Los Angeles and in San Francisco, the police detectives said that they saw like holes in people's necks, like homeless people. Well, the power, the centers of the Brotherhood, right, and the Brotherhood is meant to be working with vampires. They're in Los Angeles and they're in San Francisco as well.
Okay. Have you ever heard of murder cases that might have been caused by a vampire?
Well, since getting born again, I have friends who call me and tell me like they've had contact with police officers, especially out west, especially in San Francisco and LA, where frequently homeless people are turning up with holes in their necks and no blood in their bodies, you know, and they keep it quiet because they don't want to cause a panic. You know, that's the usual police. Because the police don't have, they think inside of a box, and they don't have they can't, vampire, you know, they don't really, I mean, it's not even a crime. You know, nowhere on unless it's, you know, considered some sort of assault, but there's not like a crime of being a vampire. And I've been told, I haven't seen this myself, but I've been told by police officers that in some parts of LA, they might have 4 or 5 homeless people a night turn up dead, you know, with holes in their necks. And, you know, nobody cares, you know, because they're homeless people, and that's why they're being preyed upon. See, vampires are like wolves. They go around and they find the weak sheep that are the edge of the flock, whether they're homeless people or street people or people that are out late at night, and they're the ones they pick off.
So that's another factor there, that maybe there is something really going on here. Because I keep seeing Los Angeles and San Francisco turning up quite a lot here. And then I find it very interesting that in Los Angeles, there's actually a hotspot of werewolf activity, according to this website I found. You know, showing you all the hotspots of where people of eyewitnesses seeing werewolves. And one of the interesting things is that people don't connect it with Satanism. So that actually gives even more credibility, because they're not part of the initiated. They're not initiated in this cult. So they don't know what they're seeing. They don't know what these werewolves are. And then we've got some other evidence here. In Crestline, California, Ted Gunderson found a satanic site, an abandoned satanic.
I developed information that an abandoned satanic site was in Crestline, California. Crestline, California is in the mountains. There's a landing strip in Crestline. I heard about this abandoned satanic site, and I went up to the site, took pictures. And this is what by the way, before I go on with this, I called the prosecutor in the McMartin case. And this is what we found. 666, one of the satanic signs, that's a stone on the site. The house had been up here. The day after the McMartin case broke in the news, the house burned to the ground. And it was here. The street's on the other side of the hill. You cannot see the site, this area down in here, from the street. You have to go in, would have to go in through the house and come down. And this, you can see it's quite elaborate. There's my associate, Judy Hansen, who works with me in L.A. And next. This is looking at the opposite direction of the picture we just took. And you can see there's San Bernardino down in there. And you can see that on the side of a mountain like that, nobody's going to find it unless you fly over with a helicopter. That's probably an altar, flattened stone. Also an altar, another altar that had been broken. This is, of course, you recognize the star. Now, this is a satanic symbol. Put the next one up. Hold the first one. There it is right there. Put the first one back on. Now overlay them. Turn it around, that away. Okay, any question about that, folks? No. Now let's read what that says. Asmodee, a strong and powerful king, appears with 3 heads, the first like a bull, the second like a man, the third like a ram. He has a serpent's tail, the webbed feet of a goose, and he vomits fire. He rides the infernal dragon, carries lance and pennon, and is the chief of the power of Amaman. He must be invoked, be bareheaded, or otherwise he will deceive. He gives the ring of virtues, teaches arithmetic, geometry, and other handicrafts, answers all questions, makes men invisible, indicates the place of concealed treasures, and guards them if within the domain of the Amaman. Oh, what do we got here? Another satanic symbol. You think that wasn't a satanic site? Overlay it. Okay. Is that it? The other way around, isn't it? Yeah. Flip it around. Okay, there you go. Okay, now let's read what that sign means. That is the seal of Amsman scale. I guess no, that's the wrong. That's the one before. Belial, a mighty king created next after Lucifer, appears in the form of a beautiful angel seated in a chariot of fire and speaking with a pleasant voice. He fell first amongst the superior angels who went before Michael and other heavenly angels. He distributes preferences of senatorships, causes favors of friends and foes, and gives excellent families. Familiar? He must have offering and sacrifices made to him. Next. And there's another satanic sign. I couldn't make that one out, so I couldn't match it with anything, obviously. Here's some ovens. That was a large circle with a number of signs in it, a lot of writing. We couldn't get up high enough that we could take a good picture of it.
Next site. And then I find it interesting that when Bill talks about what it feels like to become a werewolf, he says that it's very painful. You hear the bones crack.
Vampire because I thought it was sexier somehow, and I'd heard that becoming a werewolf was extremely painful. And indeed it is. You can hear the bones crack.
And staring us down. That's when it stood up. It was a bone-on-bone noise.
And then we find a documentary that has nothing to do with satanic research, nothing to do with Satanism, right? Describing something like a werewolf and its bones cracking. And I find it interesting that the Bohemian Club is actually in San Francisco, and the Bohemian Club is connected to Bohemian Grove. And not too far from Bohemian Grove is another hotspot for werewolf activity. And I find it interesting that in the Bohemian Grove, they do rituals in a mock human sacrifice, imitating a mock human sacrifice while wearing robes like Satanists.
Hello, I'm Alex Jones, and I'm a radio and television host based in Austin, Texas. And for many years, I've been exposing the criminal activities of the global elite, also known as the New World Order. In past films, we've documented the centralization of power, the move towards world government, the attack on the nation state, self-defense, the Second Amendment, family values, that is, the family itself, as well as private property rights. But time and time again in my research, I come, well, eye to eye with something that's even hard for me to believe. And that's that the elite, again, the so-called establishment kings, those that know best, the visions of the anointed ones, are obsessed with the occult, from presidents to governors to the heads of industry. We've all seen the stories of presidents and first ladies obsessed with their astrologers making national policy decisions upon their recommendations, spiritual guides, shamans in the White House. My friends, it gets far worse than that. Now, I personally am a Christian, but even an atheist should be concerned about the information we're about to bring forward in this new documentary film, The Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove. You see, for over 120 plus years in Northern California, in Sonoma County, on a 2,700 acre secluded redwood grove, leaders from around the world, prime ministers, chancellors, presidents, governors, again, the heads of industry, banking, academia, the media, Hollywood, only a select few, a little over 2,000 people, travel there to engage in bizarre, ancient Canaanite, Luciferian, Babylon mystery religion ceremonies. At least that was the rumors. And so I went to the library and got on the internet and saw many of the mainstream news articles admitting that world leaders do indeed go there, and they fly into San Francisco and other surrounding cities and drive out into the rural hills and mountains of Northern California, and that these stories have been coming out that they worship some 45-foot stone owl god. And then I began to read some of the documentation on this Moloch character of the Old Testament, mentioned many times in Leviticus. That's in the Bible. Why are world leaders traveling to the middle of nowhere to worship this thing? Well, I had to check it out for myself. And I'm proud of my team. Mike Hansen, Violet Nichols. They traveled with me there. We talked to some of the locals discreetly. We successfully infiltrated, with the help of some of the locals and Channel 4, World of Wonder, British television that teamed up with us. And I successfully infiltrated through the Secret Service, through the guards, through the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. We were inside 4 hours. That's only one day out of the 2 weeks that they meet there for the admitted Summer Fire Festival of the Bohemian Club. Well, basically, that's enough for me. It's hard to even describe it with words, and I hope that our hidden cameras can give you at least a small piece of what I witnessed. To have world leaders engaging in this type of sickening behavior, oh yes, there's much more to come. Mock human sacrifices, they claim, just shocks the very foundations of what Americans believe their leaders to be. And then to have it intimately connected with world government. It doesn't make a lot of sense until you research history. All throughout history, spanning back into the midst of the beginnings of civilization, we see world leaders from the empires of old, from the Aztec kings and priests, to Babylonian leaders, to ancient Rome, engaging in twisted behavior. Could it be that when you have all the power and all the women and all the money and all the lands and all the art, you have to do something new? You have to go against the basic grain of humanity. You have to get off in a sick way. That's what we witnessed in Northern California, July 15th, 2000. Get ready to go inside the Bohemian Grove.
It's where all of the, like, FBI and you're talking about the Bohemian Grove. Yeah, it's like the quote-unquote elite and presidential retreat.
Have you heard about the rituals that go on there?
No, I haven't. Well, the people who have more money than the rest of us in the world are a bit different. They're stingy. They want to hoard it all for themselves. And they think they're going to go to heaven. They're not. Because they don't know how to provide or do as Jesus told them to.
What would you say if I told you that they sacrifice a human in effigy before a giant 45 to 50 foot stone owl?
I would say that's probably why they're going to hell.
It was the night of July 15th, 2000. Mike Hansen and I were about to attempt the first ever successful infiltration of the Bohemian Grove. Others have tried and failed. No one has ever actually made it in and out with video evidence. After careful planning, we decided the best tactic would be to insert ourselves about a half mile from the main entrance into the heavily wooded area, entering the gorge by stealth and getting into the main parking area. From there, we posed as Bohemian Club members, thus entering the inner sanctums of the New World Order. That's perfect. They were just like that. No, I got it, honey. Okay, here we go.
That's good. Yeah, that's good, Alex.
You be careful, baby.
Okay.
I don't want you to go in.
Shh. I'll be safe. Don't worry about it, guys. Come on.
Be careful, Mike.
Four or five more guys. Yeah, that's, we may have to...
A thirsty man. Look
Reagan was a turning point for us. Didn't realize at the time it was. And
anytime I shoot.
Turning point for us.
Oh, really?
So many liberal Democrats in their time change things around.
It was all live. Where they congregate and prepare themselves to properly thank their deity. Again, the 3,000-plus-year-old Moloch. The occult activities are coming up. And then after the actual ritual, we're going to give you some more of the history surrounding it. But first off, I wanted to draw your attention to the program that was given out to the spectators or the viewers. I guess an occultist would call them novices, who actually watched as the priest and their supporters engaged in this ancient rite. Now, you're looking at a little demon called PJ that was on the front of the actual program. It's kind of an Hieronymus Bosch style. He's got a little broom and a dustpan, and he's sweeping something up. Now, even more shocking is the figure of a human body burning in the flames. In fact, I've shown it to people that are experts in anatomy, to actual doctors, and they say that the anatomical size is that of a baby or small child. Notice how large the cranium is in comparison to the torso, that is the ribs. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, this is from the program itself given out to the establishment lackeys witnessing the sinister activities. Remember, in Babylon and Tyre, they would throw their children into fiery pits. Look at the size of the hands compared to the rest of the body. Only children show these anatomical details. Now, of course, it's been airbrushed in, but it shows the psychology. Now, this is the only skull we actually caught on tape. We've blown it up for you over one of the major meeting houses. Of course, it's not a real skull. It was extremely oversized up on the signage. The point we're trying to make here is the entire compound was literally infested with symbols of death, skulls, owls. At long last, here it is, the cremation of care unveiled. Something particularly pleasing was happening for the Bohemian Grovers with whatever developed with that crowd of men in black and brown and the bound body on the back of the buggy. They drove behind big black tarps they had hanging out of the trees. There was lots of smacking on lips of in bizarre enjoyment by the crowd. We still haven't made out exactly what was going on, but that a real sacrifice may have actually been developing according to some occult experts. All the time in the darkness across the small lake, the men in black were doing something behind the dark curtains hanging from the redwood trees. Then after about 10 more minutes of music, suddenly all around the owl, activity began. Here is the main central part of the ritual.
The owl is in his leafy temple. Let all within the grove be reverent before him. Lift up your heads, O ye trees, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting spires. For behold, here is Bohemia's shrine, and holy are the pillars of this house. Breathing spiders, come. Buried across the shadowy tide, and all the ancient majesty of death, no arch enemy of beauty. Not for thee the tender tribute or the restful grave. Fire shall have its will of thee, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Bring fire!
slay. Year after year, he burned me in this grove, lifting your puny shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again he turned your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting as of old? Fools! Fools to dream ye conquer care!
Nay, thou mocking spirit, it is not all a dream. We know thou waitest for us. When this our sylvan holiday has ended, we shall meet thee and fight thee as of old, and some of us prevail against thee, and some thou shalt destroy. But this too we know. Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bans thee for a space. Thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
Ye shall burn me once again! Not with these flames, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
Thou, Prince of all mortal wisdom, thou of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel.
Nourished on the heights of
shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care, and all the winds make merry with thy doubts.
Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free. Now we're going to get to some enhanced video, and we'll go play by play through some of the more occultic statements, like we shall read the sign in your burned effigy, the bound body. That's exactly what the Druids actually did. They would roast cats, goats, oxen, horses, and watch the pain of how they died, and from this extract some type of mystical energy force or power, and also be able to tell the future. Owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel.
Upon further research of the ritual you just witnessed, it becomes clear. It is a mixture of the Babylonian Canaanite cult of Moloch, fused with ancient Druidic rites, where you have the female side of Satan, which they first call out to in the she, and then towards the horn god with the he, mixed with Masonic rites from Scotland. It's very likely that many of the 1,500 to 2,000 member crowd had really no idea what they were actually watching because it was thinly veiled. Here we have some more enhanced video as the boatman, again with his face painted up like a skull, pulls his boat across the small lake towards the high priest with the red of his cloak visible, with his hand outstretched as if he is pulling the damned soul towards him as they throw off their cares, their conscience for what they have to do in the world. Also, you have the arrangement of the circle of higher level priests around him, the high priest in lighter colors, and then the outer rings of red, and then those in black. This is consistent with the darker workings of the occult, not just with the Western countries, but also worldwide. Now, when you see that black edge coming to the field, that's because we zoomed in on the video, and many times the picture was almost out of the screen, so that's the edge of the field or the view of the camera. We'll get back to more enhanced video of the ritual here in just a minute. But remember PJ, the little demon down in the corner, the left-hand corner of the program, sweeping up the ashes with little horns? And how can you forget this? The image of a human body burning on the altar.
Again, this is what they were handing out to those that were witnessing these macabre activities. But again, from Babylon on into ancient England, the word bonfire, meaning human sacrifices being thrown into fiery pits, turned into today's bonfire. After the sacrifice, members of the cult would sweep up the ashes of the victim and use them in future rituals. One of the things that is extremely obvious by looking at the program handed out to Bohemian Club members is the person creating the program had a deep understanding of the occult.
There's too much evidence to actually ignore this. And then, of course, we've got the ritual killings, like people being murdered, and on the sites they were able to identify that it was to do with a ritual killing.
This is the story of that cult, and of its leader, a devil-worshipping murderer named Clifford St. Joseph.
The body was tucked underneath the front wheels on the curb side, wrapped in yellow blankets, and tied with guitar string.
What was the condition of the body when you found it?
It had a number of unusual wounds on it. One of the most unusual things was a design carved into the chest of the individual. And once we examined it more closely, it was an upside-down pentagram.
The Devil's Pentagram, the inverted five-pointed star found on the unidentified corpse of St. Joseph's victim, is apparently the principal signature of Satanists. Like a recurring nightmare, it shows up at crime scenes and in their graffiti everywhere. At St. Joseph's apartment, where this grisly murder was committed, I talked to Ed, a fringe member of the cult, and the state star witness.
What was going on in this apartment? They asked me if I had ever thought about killing somebody just to watch him die, and they asked me if I would like to join a satanic cult.
Ritual crime was apparently a regular occurrence at this apartment. In this case of torture and murder, the victim has never been identified. For purposes of this case, he was called John Doe number 60.
The first cut would be to the lips. That sealed the person's mouth for all eternity. They also poured wax, I guess, in the eyes, and that sealed their eyes for all eternity.
They did much more to John Doe number 60, but we'll spare you the details. Caught and convicted of murder, kidnapping, and ritual abuse, St. Joseph and another cult member are currently serving long prison sentences. Ed remains free, although he claims only to have been a reluctant participant in the murder of John Doe 60. He does admit bringing a teenager here to be chained up and ritualistically abused.
How can you say you have no guilt when you bring a 17-year-old kid in here, you help shackle him to a radiator, and then participate in his...
Devil worshippers, are there murderers involved in this particular case still at large?
In this particular case, yes, we do know of we have one person identified, other man identified who was present during this particular homicide.
Do you think that this ritualistic stuff is spreading?
It's all over the United States and probably all over the world because it's just something that people are experimenting with now.
Oh. Satan means whatever I'm looking at.
FBI veteran. Former head of the regional office in Los Angeles. Is there a network of these satanic murderers in this country, do you allege?
I cannot say that there's a network of satanic murderers. I can say that based on information furnished to me by confidential sources and informants, based on interviews with dozens of survivors from the satanic operations through the years, satanic beliefs, etc., I can say that there is a network of these people across the country who are very active. They have their own rest and relaxation farm. They are in contact with each other. It ties in loosely to the drug operation, ties into motorcycle gangs, and it goes on and on. They have their own people who are specialized in surveillances and photography and in assassinations.
After this commercial break, we're going to have the anatomy of a satanic crime, showing you why law enforcement has had such a difficult time coming to grips with the strange, shadowy world of satanic crime. Stay with us. One reason we think you haven't heard more about them is that many satanic crimes are simply not recognized as such. Take a look at this report, please. These ritualistic crimes are everywhere, and yet in most communities they are either overlooked or underreported. There's an example going on right now here in Kansas City that tells us why. In this house, in a quiet residential neighborhood, a series of brutally violent, horrible crimes have been committed, and yet the police and prosecutor in this town seem either unable or unwilling to draw the obvious connection between what happened here and Satanism. By a man named Bob Burdella.
He took a transformer and hooked it to my genitals and stepped back and took pictures while I'm flopping around.
What a sick dog.
It seemed to never end, you know.
After Jay escaped through a window by burning the ropes that bound him to the bed, the police arrested Burdella. When they searched his home, they found over 250 photographs of young men, including Jay, in the process of being tortured, in some cases fatally. Hidden in the walls of the home, they also found a human skull.
He had pictures of guys that he had did things to. Kids tied up and with marks on them and things.
Apparently, Burdella would pick up young men, usually hustlers like Joe. Many of them runaways who cluster in Kansas City Strip.
I need $25 and you
For a small amount of money, these kids go anywhere to do anything with anyone. Unfortunately, some went home with Burdella, whose involvement with devil worship was easily apparent. There was, for example, a satanic symbol on the outside wall of his house. His business card seemed straight from hell, and he ran this macabre shop of horrors, possibly stocking it with his own unique hobby. By agreement with the district attorney, Burdella was allowed to plead to one count of murder. He received a life sentence, but many people in this community are outraged that the investigation went no further. Did the police pursue these allegations of satanic involvement?
The police department, it's my understanding, called in some people who knew about witchcraft to talk to them about that. That particular aspect of the case basically went nowhere.
County legislator Carol Cole disagrees. Why do you think there is no attention being paid to that ritual aspect of this case?
You're in the heart of America, the Bible Belt, and we hate to think that people like that live next door to us. We're turning our backs on acting like it doesn't happen. We're putting our hands over our eyes as if it didn't occur here, that it was just a murder.
This is Detective Lee Orr of the neighboring Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. Do you believe there is a satanic aspect to these horrible crimes?
Yes, I'm sure there is, yes. We've also had contact with people that have come out of the occult, Satan worship, who have definitely made statements and who I've interviewed that state that Mr. Burdella was involved at a higher level than most in the occult.
If these allegations exist, as we narrate to you that they do, isn't it reasonable that if you pursued them with vigor, you might find evidence that could pin more of these crimes on this man, that might help solve some of the cases of missing children and missing young adults that you have in this and surrounding communities?
There isn't any question that if there are people who have information about him being involved in witchcraft or Satanism, and that information has not been given to us, that we would love to have it because it would be further leads that we could follow.
Here perhaps are some leads for investigators to follow. Item: police reports obtained by us show local authorities have long been aware that devil worshippers were conducting large-scale ceremonies in the Kansas City area. Item: this young man says he was an eyewitness to a sexual orgy at Burdella's house, one with heavy satanic overtones. And item: this woman claims she met Burdella through her former husband, a high priest in a local satanic cult.
We were at a meeting in the area, and he was up on the platform in a throne, which symbolizes that that sacrifice at that particular meeting was for him, was done for him.
So he was in an exalted position. He was a VIP.
Yes, he was.
What happened there at that ceremony?
There was a young man killed, a young boy. He was 16 years old.
Did you ever tell the police about any of this?
No, I didn't.
Why?
People don't believe you when you talk about these things. People just do not believe these things happen.
Remember, aside from the torture and sodomy of Jay, who escaped, Burdella has pled guilty to just one murder, a runaway whose skull was found inside his house. A second murder charge is pending.
About the Illuminati, I had no idea about Adam Weishaupt. However, my first major investigation when I returned from Puerto Rico was a Dr. Jeffrey R. McDonald case. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children at Fort Bragg, February 17, 1970. He'd been tried and convicted, sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I was asked by the defense team to investigate the case because they claimed that Dr. McDonald was innocent. I said I would, but if I learned that he murdered his wife and 2 children, I would discontinue my investigation, no longer become involved. I want you to know I'm still working for Dr. McDonald. He is an innocent man. Now, once I became involved in the case, I had to read everything, and I learned that evidence was lost, evidence was stolen, evidence was altered. An FBI agent, Paul Stombaugh, lied before the grand jury. And most important of all, where she had fought off the assailants under her fingernails. That skin was handed over to William F. Ivory, the chief investigator for the Army, and it has disappeared. 10 months into the case, October 25, 1980, I, through a series of circumstances, I don't have time to go into the details now, obtained a signed confession from one Helena Stokely. I had 3 sessions with her, 10 days each, total of 30 days. Helena told me that Dr. McDonald did not commit those crimes, that they were committed by her satanic cult group. And I said to myself, what's this all about? I don't know anything about Satanism. I read about it in the Bible, of course, and that's about it. But as I delved into the case, I learned that drugs from Southeast Asia were being flown into the United States to various military bases in plastic bags in the bodies of the dead GIs. I further learned from Helena that her satanic cult group was involved in distributing these drugs up and down the East Coast. They were mad at Dr. McDonald because he was abusive to the cult members and the GIs who went to the civilian hospital where he was moonlighting for relief of some sort. So they went in and attacked him that night. There were a total of 7 involved in the crime. She named them all for me. Right now, today, I know where some of them are located. But to further check and document this, I went to the UCLA library, and I found out, in fact, in the Time magazine, January 1, 1973, there was an article about bringing drugs in plastic bags in the body cavities of dead GIs. There was no question in my mind Helena was telling the truth. I gave her a polygraph test, and she passed. I had her examined by a psychiatrist, and she passed. And as a matter of fact, the government themselves had given her a polygraph examination early in their investigation before I entered the case. And Byzantine, the Army polygraph operator, said that she thought that she was telling the truth. She thought she was there that night. Now, the most recent series of events on the McDonald case. Now, I'm telling you a little bit about the McDonald case because that's what woke me up as to what was going on. It was after that I started researching and went back and found out about the Illuminati/Satanism. It was after that I learned considerable more about what was going on. And the most recent information, Dr. McDonald, who's been in the penitentiary for some 25 or 26 years now, appeared before a parole board just 2 days ago, his first that he's ever appeared before a parole board. And the reason he had never appeared before is because, in his opinion, had he appeared before, it would be an admission of guilt. In this particular instance, he still claimed he was innocent, but he did appear before the board because a newly wed individual with a woman named Kathy. And of course, if you read the papers in the last 2 days, his parole was turned down, and the parole board made him eligible for another hearing in 15 years. This poor man not only lost his wife and 2 children, he has served 25 years in the penitentiary and another 15 years to go. He's 61 years old. I am still working the case. What are the latest developments on the case? In 1997, the judge, federal judge, agreed to do DNA tests. And they chose 15 individual pieces of evidence to be examined. However, the judge said that when you open the evidence envelopes, only the prosecutor can be present. Well, they opened the evidence envelopes. The prosecutor did. How many do you think were empty? 5. 5 evidence envelopes were empty. The skin under Colette's fingernails would have established Dr. McDonald's innocence alone. Now we have DNA authorized in 1997. Here we are in 2005. They still have not completed the DNA test.
Respected law enforcement professional, recently or retired now from the FBI, former regional director of Los Angeles. Do you, sir, believe that these dreadful allegations of babies being sacrificed are true?
I absolutely believe it, without any doubt. Based on the information that's been given to me across the country by numerous survivors and by confidential sources and informants.
Then why don't you name these people and arrest them? Never a name, never an arrest. These women come out of a group and they insist that they know the people in the group, and yet they do not identify these large mysterious cults. Name them and arrest them and get them off the street.
Does he not make a valid point?
He makes a valid point. The problem with that is, number one, police officers don't believe it. I may believe it. You may believe it. Some people in your audience may believe it. They don't believe it. Number two, if you decide to investigate these people, you have to, number one, handle it from an undercover operation. If you put an undercover operation into effect, then you have, in a sense, your own police officers become involved in these heinous crimes, and they are, of course, become murderers. And in addition to that, if you do decide to investigate these people, there's a lot of work. And many law enforcement officers are apathetic and don't want to get involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard this.
Obviously, they're not going to leave their candles and their knife lying at the crime scene. You know, you're not going to see that. They're going to take it with them.